Okay, we're live. Good morning, everybody out there, of which there seems to be a few. So welcome to this day of meditation on the theme of mindfulness and wisdom. And those of you who've perhaps never been before, I'm Samaneri Jayasāra, or Ayya Jayasāra, and this is Ayya Jitindriyā. So we're here today to offer a day of meditation, and also just to begin to welcome you all to the Lunar New Year. So most of you are probably aware that it's the year of the dragon. I haven't actually looked at as to what that really means, but I know there's a lot of energy. It was a wood dragon, so it might be less energetic than a fire dragon. I think it's a wood dragon. So as we enter this other new year, the Lunar New Year, or Losar, if you're Tibetan practitioners and follow that particular calendar, it's an important time, an auspicious time. So unbeknownst to us, we set this date. we didn't even know that it was the Lunar New Year. So that's all good. It's a good time to be doing a day of retreat practice. So you've probably all seen the schedule. The proposed schedule is that we do have 4 sessions on YouTube in which we offer some guided meditations, some Dharma reflections, an opportunity for Q&A, and then there's breaks in between in which the schedule suggests, or the retreat schedule suggests, that we do some walking meditation. So we'll give some instructions on walking meditations. But yeah, the idea is to make the day doable and enjoyable, that you're not just going to be sitting cross-legged for 11 hours trying to keep this unruly mind settled. There's opportunities to kind of practice in a more integrated, natural way, learning how just to watch the mind, whether it's walking or sitting, or if you're not well, you might be lying down, and that's okay too if you can stay awake. And equally, when you're listening to the Dharma or asking questions or listening to answers, this is all an opportunity for meditation practice, just to watch the mind, to see what's coming up, to develop insights and so on. So that's the general outline. And for those of you who are joining now for the first session, who can actually be with us live for the whole day, which is mostly probably just Australians, a few in Southeast Asia.
North America. Oh, maybe not.
Sort of, they'll
day.
be getting tired by the end session. But anyway, you've got the opportunity to practice it, or to use this resource, even if you're not able to stay and do it as a whole day. You might do a half day today if you're in the States or Europe or Africa or wherever you are, and then do another day, half day tomorrow. Or you might just be tuning in now, two days later at your time at 8:30, and just be able to do this session, this day in a complete way. So it's designed for that, and it will stay up on the archives for people to do it and utilize it that way.
And just to mention, the same links will always work to go back and do the retreat sessions.
Good. And so what we're encouraging today, and we obviously will talk about Dharma as we go, from a practical point of view, the encouragement is to do this retreat as you would any retreat that you went to. So certainly within this tradition. So if you're able to observe noble silence, that will actually help you. Everyone's got different situations, but you might just be able to tell your family members, partner, that you're just going to be quiet for a day. So just to avoid or limit as much social interaction, chit-chat, busyness. So if you can put your phones off, move away from emails and social media for a day, that will just support you so much, and it's good to experience what that feels like, just to switch off, just for 24 hours. And so therefore, you know, in terms of this chat room, it's great to see and to acknowledge everyone coming, but we will be turning it off for most of the retreat, except for the Q&A session. So once we start the reflection, I'll turn that chat off, but just know that there's people out there, and we're just trying to all maintain a certain silence and stillness to support the practice. Is there any other practical things you want to say before we go more into the reflections?
We'll just explain things as we go in terms of walking meditation instruction and the breaks and when to come back into the next video session. Yeah.
Good. So I am going to just turn it off now, and we'll be turning it back on, I think, in the third session, isn't it?
Second session before lunch, we'll have 45 minutes of Q&A.
Oh, we do too. Thank you. All right. So as we kind of formally start this retreat, what we would do if it was a Buddhist retreat is we would take the 3 refuges and the 5 or 8 precepts, but we're not doing this as a sort of a traditional Buddhist retreat. But for those who are practicing Buddhists or who want to learn to kind of utilize some of these skillful practices, then please spend some time taking refuge in the Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, which you can do in English or Pali if you know it. And you may wish to be observing the 5 or 8 precepts today. For those of you who don't know what they are, please utilize Google today. But it's really just a way of undertaking in a formal way observation and an intention to uphold these skillful means of refraining from harmful things, lying, stealing, killing, sexual misconduct, intoxicants. And if you're taking the 8 precepts, you're undertaking just a little bit of higher training to refrain from indulging in food and sensual things. But this
only food in the evening. You can eat eat your lunch.
Oh yeah, sorry, you can eat your lunch, which is what we'll do, and then you stop after that. Anyway, those of you who are Buddhists, there's no need for me to explain what that is, so you can incorporate that into the meditation day. But this, you know, reflecting on why we do that, and even taking refuges in the Triple Gem is a way to turn the mind quite consciously to what you're doing today. You know, why you may not have even asked yourself this, so it's an opportunity for everyone to ask, why are you here? What do you want to get out of this meditation? You know, why do we meditate? And these refuges and precepts are a reflection of what the Buddha encourages to turn our mind towards, and that the practice of meditation is really about turning the mind towards virtue. So you might be familiar with the Buddha's teaching from the Dhammapada, which is we practice this whole path. It's not just meditation or having experiences of meditation or just getting calm. But he said the whole purpose is to refrain from evil or unskillfulness, unwholesomeness, it's translated as, to do what is good or what is skillful, and to purify the mind. And this is the teaching of all the Buddhas, he said. So any enlightened person, and any enlightened master, and you would have heard this on the channel, you know, this path is there. Sometimes it's laid out very clearly, as the Buddha did with the Eightfold Noble Path. And other teachings, it's a little subtle, but it's there. It's really about the purification of the mind in order to see and understand reality, the nature of the mind, the nature of truth. And we can't do this if we're indulging in evil actions of body, speech, and mind. So we have to recognize that this base of sila is foundational and indispensable for developing samadhi, or concentration of the mind, settledness of the mind. And then when those things are cultivated and developed, then wisdom can naturally arise. So if people don't have a clear framework and are interested in this whole path, the Buddha's path, then I refer you to the teaching, the 6-part series that Ayya Jitindriyā recently did, if you're interested in that. If you're not, if you just kind of, just want to do some meditation, that's fine too, but those resources are there to go a little deeper and be more comprehensive. Okay, so let's just start before we go more into some Dharma reflections. Let's just start by settling wherever you are in order to see for yourself what's going on, what we need to look at, and how we can utilize some skillful means to settle the mind and start to develop some clarity for this day of meditation. So I invite you all, wherever you are, just to get comfortable and still, because some of you might be here, but your attention might be elsewhere, or you might be doing something else. So the idea is to be really settled and still. Either sitting on the floor if you can manage it, or you might be sitting in a chair. Whatever you're doing, just keep your back upright, supported and relaxed. And just turn your gaze inward, whether you wish to turn your eyes down, gazing at a point, a reference point on the floor, or if you feel more comfortable, just close your eyes. And just begin by arriving here, fully arriving in the present moment. And we do this just by noticing whatever's happening. Whether it's a whirlwind of thoughts, emotions, or unpleasant bodily sensations. Just start to get a global sense of being conscious of what's often unconscious. Just witnessing all the internal dialogue, any expectations, judgments, anticipations about what's going on, what's going to happen, what you're hoping for, what you're not hoping for. And simply start to witness that more and more. Noticing when you're caught up. And how does that feel? Noticing if you're trying to make anything happen, to get anything, to do something to change this moment just as it is. And notice the struggle and the tension if this is happening. We're simply starting the day by just noticing whatever's happening from moment to moment, and shining the light of awareness on it. Beginning the day's retreat by simply putting down any expectations, any desires to get something, to fix something, to change something. And being willing to just stay awake to what is. Whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Bringing an attitude of the mind that can simply witness with compassion, with patience, and with less and less judging. And one way to turn the mind very quickly from an unpleasant, negative state of mind is to make the intention that whatever practice I do today, may it be of benefit for all beings in the world. May whatever purity develops in my mind, whatever peace arises in my heart, may it be of benefit to the whole world, which is drowning in so much ignorance and delusion, fear and hatred. So when we turn the mind to thinking about the welfare of others, it can help us just let go, and it drops quickly. All these self-concerns and worries can simply dissolve. So just take a moment in silence where we can generate that intention. May my practice develop fruits for the benefit of all beings. So as we come to a day of meditation where we're putting things down, distractions, engagements, busyness, it's important to remember that the mind will take a little time to settle down. So there's no forcing. If you notice this tension of trying to force the mind, it's just going to stir things up. So it's like that glass of muddy water. The mind just needs time to settle, like that muddy water. And when you don't stir it, it will just naturally settle. And turning the mind towards Dharma, towards Dharma reflections and truth, is one way to really help the mind settle and to purify in the process. So now that we've made the intention just to stop a little, be present, I'm inviting Jitindriyā to give the first action of the day. And as you're listening, again, it's important just to be fully present, to listen beyond the words, beyond the appearances, and to hear the Dharma as it resonates in your heart. Not so much in your head. You can do some of that later if you need to, but for now, just try to utilize the Dharma teachings as a meditation in itself, because that's really what it is. So I'll move out of the way and
Okay, I'm just going to turn
Ayya
this.
can give the first reflection.
Just turn the screen as we'll turn the screen as we focus during the day on whoever's giving a reflection. Okay. So thank you, Ayya, for that lovely introduction and reflection for the beginning of our retreat. So I will give a Dharma reflection now, plus a guided meditation after that, and then we will do some walking meditation, and I'll explain how that happens before the morning break. And we're going to be doing this retreat, the schedule, as well, so we're keeping the same schedule as you. So just to pick up on a few threads here that Venerable Jayasāra started with, it's so helpful. You may have recognized if you were following her, if you were following the instructions she gave to bring forth this intention of, it's really in the Tibetan tradition, we call it bodhicitta. It's really the heart of not only wishing or striving or moving towards enlightenment, but doing it for the benefit of all beings, not just oneself, not just may I be free from suffering, but may all beings be free from suffering. And, we might think of that as a huge aspiration, but actually it just starts in the heart with this intention, and from a moment of reflecting in this way, the mind can become quite clear, open, and spacious. It's a really powerful, wholesome Dharma. And if we recollect to do this before our practice or at any time in the day, to bring in this intention of compassion, of kindness, the intention of harmlessness for the benefit of all beings, this intention in itself is a powerful generator of the path, a powerful element of purification of the mind. Jayasāra talked of purification of the mind. It can sound quite high-minded and refined, but what it means is it's actually just the dispelling of delusion, the dispelling of negative mind states, the dispelling of defilements, such that the mind can shine in its true nature, show its true nature, which, just like the nature of the sun, is bright, luminous, and by its own nature it shines on all things. But sometimes the clouds which pass over the sun from our point of view obstructs it. And it's a direct correlation with the notion of the so-called defilements of the mind or impurities of the mind or negative mind states are just like clouds that come and obstruct the light. And if we believe we are those clouds, then suffering, the experience of suffering emerges. But if we recognize clouds as clouds, impermanent, conditioned mind states, and we notice from this point of right view, they begin to clear, and the natural luminosity of the sun or the natural luminosity of the mind appears again. So this is a good metaphor to keep in mind. And I wanted to just pick up on another thread from this morning when Jayasāra mentioned about wholesomeness and cultivating our mind in terms of establishing the intention of harmlessness, which is what the precepts, basic 5 precepts, are about. It's harmlessness towards all beings, respecting all beings. And it's rooted in this intention of kindness and compassion. Yeah. So it's connected with right view, right intention. But the Buddha said when we have this intention and we bring forth this wholesome action of body, speech, and mind, it's actually a gift that we're giving to all beings. We might think, I'm alone, I'm a solo practitioner. What does it matter what I think and don't think? But the Buddha said when we bring forth intention, we're giving the gift of fearlessness to all beings. Really powerful. And you can recognize that when your heart responds internally to that, establishing that intention. So coming into our theme for the day, I'll just check timing for our guided meditation. Okay. Our theme for the day, cultivating mindfulness and wisdom. Mindfulness, awareness, full awareness, and wisdom. So many of you would have heard these words, mindfulness, a translation of the Pali word sati from within the Buddhist tradition, but it's a very common word these days, to be mindful. And if we look at all of the teachings across all spiritual traditions, this is actually one of the common factors. Presence of mind. In the Christian tradition, these terms about being in the presence of God or cultivating silence and presence, being mindful, being aware. This is the main trajectory of all spiritual practice, is learning how to be present. And it's not as if we're not present naturally, or rather I should say, it's not as if we don't have awareness naturally. Awareness is the actual root of the Dharma, the root of the mind. Awareness is ever present, naturally. But what happens is the conditioning of our mind and the conditioned processes of mind as we live our life, our attention gets siphoned into so many different activities, so many different experiences. And the mind can become conditioned to thinking and being caught in thoughts of past and future, planning for the future, rehashing the past, and losing that natural capacity to just be, to allow attention to just settle in the present moment and be open to receive and experience what is. This is a natural capacity, but the conditioning process of the mind can usurp that to some degree. And you'll notice this, obviously, for those of you beginning or involved in a meditation practice. We set the intention to be present with something as simple as the breath or listening to sounds or body sensations, whatever is our practice, or a mantra, or to sit in silence. And then we start to notice how the mind's attention, let's say, is drawn to particular different experiences, and then how the thinking process can proliferate upon that, and how attention would being caught up. It's about attention being siphoned into a particular trajectory of thinking for the most part. Now, in living our life, we have to give attention and to projects, to things, to accomplish things. But we can start to develop this capacity to be aware when and even as thinking is happening, even as we're giving attention to a particular project or to planning or to reviewing the past, we can be aware that thinking is happening. Whereas without a training per se, without really intending to do that, the mind tends to get lost in conceptual, in imagination, conceptual proliferation. And this can be a source of great suffering in itself when it feels out of control, when it's fueled by states of anxiety or restlessness, whether the mind gets caught in painful memories from the past or fearful memories of the future, or just obsessive planning about this or that. So we notice this is what can happen. And when that happens, it causes some suffering. We can recognize that. We learn to bring awareness to these processes of mind in order to wake up more and more, and in order to recognize the natural state of awareness more and more. So this is the cultivation of mindfulness or presence, or in, say, the Advaita tradition, we can talk about just being, learning how to be. It's a mind of awareness that is open, sensitive. Sense impressions still come and go, but the mind can have this full awareness of what's going on. And it starts to even notice when we get drawn into thoughts of the future or thoughts of the past or obsessive thinking or daydreaming, imagination, and even blanking out. Awareness can become more sensitive, for want of a better word, or more refined. What's actually happening is we're noticing the quality of awareness more and more as the ever-present state, the fabric of consciousness itself. So in terms of mindfulness, the mindfulness practice is about not only recognizing awareness itself, but recognizing that which comes and goes. The jargon is what we call the objects of mind. So this is all the sense activity. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, sensation, tactile sensation, and thought itself. Thoughts, ideas, conceptualization. This is the objects of the mind sense. So we notice when these things occur, and they're occurring all the time. So the mindfulness practice is about recognizing presence and absence, and particularly recognizing that these different types of sense impressions, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, sensations, thoughts, the common factor among all of them is that they're ephemeral. They come and go. They make an appearance and then they disappear. Even though thoughts, a trajectory of a train of thinking may seem to have a continuity, not one thought remains. It may be the condition for another thought to arise, but each thought, each idea, each moment of perception is a mere impression. So mindfulness is that which notices this quality, this characteristic of all sense experience. It comes and goes, arises, ceases, appears, disappears. No matter what its valence, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, whether it's skillful or unskillful. Mindfulness just notices that. I mean, mindfulness will notice much more as it becomes a stronger faculty as you practice. But what is important is also, and this is what can happen for practitioners sometimes, is that we can get a little bit obsessed with watching the changing scenery of the mind, watching all the objects come and go. And that in itself can maintain a certain restlessness of mind. So in as much as we notice the ephemeralness of objects, that things appear and disappear, we want to particularly notice. One could emphasize, say, the disappearing, the cessation, the emptiness, the ultimate insubstantiality of these impressions. Just to notice that. We're not pushing things away. We're not getting caught up, ideally we're not getting caught up in judging whatever impressions arise, but we notice that they always subside. And the emphasis on this is that we can then perhaps more easily notice awareness itself, that which is knowing, ever knowing, ever present. And whilst words always have their limitations, we could say that this awareness is like the fabric of experience, or the ever-present background of all experience. We can say experiences are that which come and go, the impressions, the sound of the bird, the sound of a dog, the sound of my voice, the thought, the internal thinking, a momentary sensation. But there's this ever-present knowing. And when we recognize that, what happens? We may recognize it for a moment, and then our attention is lost again in the stream of sense experience. And that's fine. But as soon as you recognize that, there's a knowing. There's a clear knowing. And those moments of clear knowing of the way things are, in this sense, this is the Dharma, the way things are, there's potential for profound insight there. Insight being a deep recognition of reality, of the nature of reality, such that it changes something. It shifts our view of reality. It undercuts any delusion or misconception about the nature of reality, nature of the subject or so-called subject or object, and about the nature of suffering, how the experience of suffering is a conditioned experience and actually arises from a wrong view, from delusion, from not understanding the way things actually are, from a presumption that is not based on reality, but based on projection or delusion or conditioning of the mind. So the practice of mindfulness, awareness, in whichever mode it comes through, whichever tradition it comes, is about clearing the mind. Or as Jayasāra used that metaphor of the cup that has some mud in it, the glass of water with some mud in it, as long as it's stirred up, it remains muddy water, you can't see through it. But once it settles, the water becomes purified. Then essence, the nature of the water is clear and pure. The mud settles to the bottom and there's clear seeing. So this is one metaphor of how clarity comes and insight comes. Now some will say, well, that mud is still at the bottom of the glass, so it has the potential, if it's stirred again through different conditions, to muddy the water, to muddy the mind, which is true. But the more, in terms of our direct practice, the more we recognize the nature of that water in and of itself, the nature of awareness in and of itself, that clarity, that natural clarity, awareness. And in terms of the mind, the insubstantiality or emptiness, then we recognize that whether or not mud is present, mud is stirred up, mud settled or present. And that is a direct metaphor for the actual clearing away of the mud. When our insight cuts through, that mud is not just settling, which is sometimes related to the samadhi process, just calming the mind, but it's actually dispelled and cut through. And if the insight is deep enough, that mud is void. It doesn't return. Or it gets less and less until the full insight of full awakening clears the mind. So this is the, let's say, the framework for cultivating mindfulness, presence, awareness, and its purpose. The wisdom, it just means seeing the way things are. But wisdom is, when we see the way things are, it actually usurps ignorance. It's the direct counter to unawareness or ignorance or delusion. So wisdom actually usurps that, clears it away. But that wisdom arises naturally from clear seeing. And in some traditions, they also equate that wisdom with awareness itself, the purity and clarity of natural awareness. So it's actually, in some traditions, particularly the Dzogchen or Mahamudra, actually say that wisdom is already present as an inherent characteristic of the nature of mind, awareness itself. And in other traditions, we talk about that as actually the fruit that comes through the cultivation of mindfulness and awareness and having those insights, seeing clearly into the nature of mind. So that wisdom is present as a seed, you could say, and once the insights, the mind sees clearly, then that seed comes to fruition, blossoms and fruits. So I'm going to take us into a guided meditation now for 20 minutes, based somewhat on what I've discussed here. And that'll be about 20 minutes. If you need to just stretch your limbs a little bit now, feel free to do that before we begin in about 30 seconds or so. And after 20 minutes, I'm going to give you a few minutes instructions to then go on with some walking meditation before our morning break. Okay? So establish yourself again in a comfortable posture. In our tradition, our Buddhist tradition, our way of practice for cultivating the meditation, we usually bring to mind or bring awareness to the experience of body and breath. in the beginning. So, in whatever position you've taken for this 20-minute meditation, just become aware of the feeling of the body, the general sense of the weight of the body, the sensations you feel where your body's touching the cushion of the chair or the zafu, or if you're lying down, the weight of your body on the couch or the bed. Those points of contact where we feel sensation more strongly. Simply being aware of those. Allowing the body to relax. So becoming aware of any places in the body where you may be holding tension or armoring against any painful sensations. Breathing with those sensations and allowing some relaxation. And then, even as you may be aware of sounds or thoughts moving through the mind, just let them be in the background. We're bringing body awareness to the foreground. And as you pay attention to the body, you naturally begin to notice the rhythm of the in and out breath. Because the body is always breathing. It depends on this process of taking in nutriment from the environment through the air. The nutriment that feeds all the cells of our body, brings nutriment into the bloodstream, which feeds the cells. And then the expiration, expiring the spent air, the spent nutrient, back into the environment. So this body is completely dependent on this process of respiration. It's an innate part of bodily existence. Breathing in and breathing out. So being an ever-present process, it's actually an ideal object for meditation or meditation support. That is, we can give our attention to it very gently, to rest our attention on the process of the in and out breath. Becoming interested in it. Just to be aware of how this works. We don't have to force breath or intend breath. The body naturally breathes. So let's spend about 5 minutes or so just learning to bring attention to noticing the sensations of the in and out breath. And of course, attention will become distracted by thoughts. So the practice is simply to wake up to that when it happens. To know thinking. And remember the breath again. It's always there. We just lose awareness of it. So letting go of involvement in thought and coming back to recognizing the breath sensations, which are always changing, always moving. But they help you to establish mindfulness of body, ever-present awareness. So just as if you're sitting on a sandy shore and watching these gentle wavelets come in and roll out, we simply learn to watch the in-breath and the out-breath, this gentle movement of air rolling in and out of the body. So learning how to relax just as you would sitting on that sandy, sunny, quiet shore. Nothing to do but just watch and enjoy the wavelets rolling in and out. So we do with the breath. So this process, beginning to calm the mind or allowing the mind to calm, to settle, you can continue to just use this experience of the breath in this way, keeping your awareness fully present, but staying focused in and around the breathing process. you can open the mind to also recognize the coming and going, the ephemerality of all sense impressions, even as you continue to use the breath as the basis, as the anchor for calmness. If there's still a lot of restless thinking, don't get concerned or worried about it. Just notice thinking. Say to yourself, just thinking. And remember the breath, even if it's just for a moment, to feel the sensations connected with the in-breath and out-breath. Even if it's just a few moments you can manage, that's really good. Or at least if the breath is too subtle for you at the moment, just feel the body sitting. Feel the weight of the body. And then the movement of the breath will come into view. And just keep noticing what's happening, letting things be as they are. If there's restlessness or worry or any anxiety present for you, just notice that. It's unpleasant, but don't buy into it. Don't let it wind you up even more. Say to yourself, it's just the mind feeling like this in this moment. Don't be anxious about anxiety. And then notice what happens when you can relax around whatever is present. Bringing awareness to the way things are. So as we bring this meditation to a close, just notice what's happening for you right now. And take a fully conscious in-breath and coming back into the shared space of this online connection. Okay. So with the cultivation of meditation, we're learning how to just be with the way things are, but in a particular way, which is through relying on and resting in awareness. Letting awareness come to the fore more and more, and a recognition for what's present, not hanging on to it, not clinging, at least recognizing when there's clinging, obsession, breathing with, learning how to let go through recognizing awareness. And not judging. The mind will throw up all sorts of material in terms of thoughts, memories, fears, projections, hopes, desires. You know, the path is recognizing all of that. Initially, we get caught up in it. We want certain things, we don't want other things, but that conditioned reactivity of wanting and not wanting is like the stirring of the mud in the water. It just keeps things stirred up. But if we try to not want, if we try to get rid of wanting and not wanting, that's still stirring things up. It's not about getting rid of anything. It's finding that middle way. And the Buddha's path is the middle way between, well, the way Ajahn Chah put it, between indulgence in pleasure and indulgence in pain. Which means we're recognizing pleasantness and unpleasantness, but we learn not to indulge it or react to it. But as we do that, as we cultivate the way, we're noticing when the mind is reacting. And it's just like that. It's a conditioned process. But when we notice it, we're not feeding it. When we're not noticing it, there's a conditioned feeding of that process. Okay. So we'll discuss these things more and more as we move through the day. And as I said, the opportunity for Q&A will be the 45 minutes before the lunch break. But for now, we're going to do some walking meditation. And within a period of practice, like a day long, it's obviously important to bring other postures in, to cultivate meditation in walking, standing, lying down. This is part of the practice that the Buddha taught, mindfulness practice, mindfulness of walking. And in the forest tradition, we actually take up a particular path of walking. So whether you go outside to walk or stay inside, just choose, a length. It could be, even if the room you have, even if you can only do 5 paces in one length, that's okay. But ideally, 10 to 15, 20 paces maximum for a walking path. And have a beginning and an end, or a piece of furniture or a door or a marking on the ground. If you're outside, some sticks on the ground or a tree, they demarcate the beginning of your walking path and the end of your walking path. And with the walking meditation, just as in the sitting meditation, we take a particular object of experience to be our anchor. So in walking, the easiest thing to take is the feeling of the feet touching the ground. Or you don't have to have bare feet, it's just with shoes as well, just the step, the feeling of the foot landing on the ground. So using that step as your point of awareness, your point of bringing awareness to here and now. Just like we recollect the breath or bodily sensation, it's an anchor point for here and now. So beginning at the beginning of your walking path, notice your intention to start walking, and then each step is a moment of remembering here and now. You'll notice that you'll get distracted by sights or sounds in the environment. It's fine, just notice, hearing, seeing, and practice just not proliferating around that. Just letting it go and coming back to the feeling of standing or walking until you get to the end of your path. Notice the feeling of the end of the path. Turning around. Now you're at the beginning of the path, and we proceed again to walk at a slow to medium pace until you get to the end of your path. So the idea is to start to cultivate a continuity of awareness. So as we can be mindful and aware from the beginning to the end. Initially, what we notice is that you may only be aware of 1 or 2 steps, and you arrive at the end of the path and you think, wow, the mind's attention was caught up in a thought or proliferating around a sound or a sight. Oh, but the end, it wakes you up. You're at the end of the path. So awake, you turn around, you're awake at the beginning, aware at the beginning, aware as you set out. So again, in a relaxed way, don't get tight about it, but don't get too loose about it either, because your mind will be proliferating around all sorts of things, but not being aware of the steps you're taking. So relaxed walking, enjoy the walking, whether you're using just the movement of the body as your anchor of mindful awareness, or the feeling of each step on the ground. If something grabs your attention through hearing or seeing, you can stop, recognize that, and then return to your walking. So we'll do this for, let's say, 25 to 30 minutes. And then we're going to have a half-hour break where you can have a cup of tea, a bit of, if you need a little something to eat, or use the loo. And then we'll come back to begin the second session. Let's see, for now, the second session will start in an hour's time, or a little less now. And you just need to click into that second link, 2 of number 4, and that's where we'll be live streaming the second session. Okay, enjoy your walking and enjoy the break, and we'll see you soon.